When you think about sporting legends, you often picture, well, perfection.
Right. You picture the model, athlete, smooth performance, precision, absolute control.
But for every champion that follows the textbook, there is this beautiful, logic-defying outlier.
And in the world of Japanese racing, that outlier was absolutely Mejiro Palmer.
It's a real paradox of success, isn't it?
It's the ultimate paradox. Most horses win because they follow the rules, they stick to a strategy. Palmer won because he was reckless, he was strange, impossible to truly control.
He just refused to slow down.
He took chaos and he turned it into a weapon.
So our mission today is a deep dive into this stack of sources we have on Palmer's, frankly, bizarre and historic career.
Yeah.
We're going to try and extract how a horse who was functionally discarded, constantly underestimated, and, plagued by serious injuries, managed to conquer Japan's biggest races using one outrageous, simple tactic, run and never look back.
And when we put this all into context, Mejiro Palmer's career is just a masterclass in unconventional success. It proves that the straightest line is rarely the most successful one.
So he was bred by the famed Mejiro farm.
Right, an institution known for producing racing royalty. But he was an afterthought, completely overshadowed by his peers.
Like who?
Well, you had Mejiro Ryan, who was a huge favorite, and then, of course, Mejiro McQueen, who would become one of the greatest long-distance runners of his entire era.
And Palmer gets named after the legendary golfer Arnold Palmer, but the expectations weren't legendary at all.
Not even close. Maybe for a decent horse, perhaps. His pedigree didn't help much either.
His sire was Mejiro Eagle,
who was famous for being a front runner, but had completely failed as a stallion, sired very few winners, and his dam was Mejiro Fantasy.
So he wasn't bred for the elite G1 scene?
No, he was bred for a reliable existence, maybe a decent career in smaller races. He was born in the shadow of his farm mates, and everything about his genetics just screamed underachiever.
And yet there was that initial flicker of promise.
There was, yeah. He won his third start, and he even managed to win the Cosmos Show Open race. For a brief moment, the people at Mejiro thought they might have a sleeper hit.
That moment was very fleeting.
Oh, it was. Because the collapse was swift and it was total. It revealed his true, fragile nature.
He just stopped winning.
Completely. And when they finally stepped him up to the G1 level, the Tenno Show Spring, he was crushed. Just couldn't compete with that elite company.
And then it gets worse.
Much worse.
Because then came the physical disaster. 2 serious fractures. That's often the end for a top-level career.
Right. And his situation was so bleak that the sources say his connections considered the ultimate demotion.
Sending him to jump racing.
Yeah, which is seen as less financially rewarding and, frankly, physically brutal.
Yeah.
That decision shows you how desperate they were.
They had a horse who was broken, defeated.
And clearly not cutting it in flat racing. They needed an exit strategy. But what's so fascinating is that even the escape route failed.
What do you mean by that? They couldn't even get him over the hurdles.
Exactly. The source material notes he was, and I'm quoting here, dangerously bad at jumping.
Wow.
The level of recklessness and lack of control was apparently so extreme that they shelved the idea immediately. He couldn't even manage the demotion safely.
So no choice. They bring him back to the flat track, but he has to start all over again from the absolute lowest class.
Reborn as a 500,000 yen allowance horse. And for anyone who doesn't follow JRA racing, you need to understand what that means.
Explain that for us.
It's not just a low-class race. This is the equivalent of being sent back to the absolute minor leagues. He was starting over from the competitive and financial basement.
He was given up on.
Essentially, yes. But that low point, that near abandonment, was the crucial moment. It forced them to stop trying to mold him into some classic racehorse and start accepting his flaws.
Which brings us to how they rebuilt him. They had to embrace that volatile DNA he got from his sire, Mejiro Eagle.
And back in those lower-class races, Palmer finally leaned into his true weapon.
He adopted the front-running tactics. He just decided, I'm going to bolt, push the pace, and dare anyone to catch me.
And the results were striking. He finished second in his return, and then after almost 2 years, 1 year and 9 months, he finally scored a victory.
This wasn't about refined technique.
No, this was about raw, sustained effort that just resonated with his temperament.
And that momentum carries him forward, right into his first graded victory, the Sapporo Kinen.
A G3, where he led wire to wire. And this was the first real validation of that runaway identity, but the emotional side of this is even deeper.
What do you mean?
The sources have this specific, incredibly poignant detail. The staff who had cared for his unsuccessful sire, Mejiro Eagle,
Yeah.
they reportedly cried when Palmer won. Eagle had only covered one mare that entire year. His bloodline was on life support.
So Palmer's win kept that lineage alive.
Exactly.
Oh.
It was this personal, visceral triumph for the farm staff, a sign that even overlooked bloodlines could still break through.
But because this is Mejiro Palmer, that breakthrough was immediately followed by inconsistency.
Of course. More poor finishes, more disappointment. The desperation came back and the connections, well, they tried jump racing again.
It just shows you the frustration.
It does. He ran twice and look, he scored a win in a second, but he was coming back to the barn covered in injuries every single time.
That's brutal.
And the trainer, Okubo, just couldn't bear to watch it. So in early 1992, he pulled Palmer back to flat racing for good.
So let's talk about why this detour, this temporary injury-riddled detour, was so critical for his entire career.
It was a complete physical re-engineering of the horse.
How so?
Well, flat racing demands explosive speed, right? Fast twitch muscles. Jump racing demands continuous, unrelenting, oxygen-burning output. You have to launch, land, push off again and again.
So it's a different kind of fitness.
A completely different kind. That detour didn't just give him generic stamina. It physically rebuilt his engine from a sprinter's model to a marathon machine. It gave him powerful hindquarters and the core strength to maintain a devastating pace.
So he finally had the structure to support his reckless desire to run. The engine was built.
But he needed a driver who understood how to manage that chaos.
And in April '92, during that legendary Tenno Show spring, the famous clash between Tokai Teo and Mejiro McQueen Palmer met Jockey Taisei Yamada.
And that race was a defining moment, even though Palmer wasn't a contender. He ran that brutal 3,200-meter distance at a shocking pace.
The fastest he'd ever set.
And for the first time, he didn't completely collapse at the end. He finished a decent 7th, and Yamada immediately saw it. He saw the new stamina and realized this horse needed controlled freedom, not restraint.
And Yamada's strategy was so counterintuitive. It wasn't about controlling the horse in a traditional way.
Not at all. It was simply let him run, but slow him down as much as you possibly can. It was about managing the effort, not killing it.
And that balance made him lethal.
It did. He scored another wire-to-wire win, this time in the Niigata Dasho 10, a G3, confirming the strategy worked. But the real moment of truth was the 1992 Takarazuka Kinen.
One of the 2 Grand Prix races in Japan, a truly elite contest.
And that day was pure, unadulterated chaos.
Palmer and his longtime rival, Daitaku Helios, who had the same runaway tendency.
They decided to just blast off together in what looked like a suicidal duel. And crucially, the sources highlight that because Mejiro McQueen was injured, there was no clear favorite to set a sensible pace.
So the chaos was just allowed to go completely unchecked.
They burned out the track, and the impossible happened. Palmer held on to win. He became a G1 winner and a Grand Prix champion.
And he was the only horse in history to win a flat G1 after having returned from jump racing.
That statistic alone tells you how improbable this all was.
And the reaction from everyone tells you everything about the lack of expectation. He was the 9th favorite, right?
9th. And the sources describe the winner's circle as heartbreakingly empty.
Heartbreakingly empty.
No one believed he could do it. They were there to see Tokai Teo or maybe the next favorite, not Palmer.
That detail, the empty winner's circle, is so profound.
It is. It shows that even winning wasn't enough to change the core narrative, that he was just a fluke, an accident.
And that absence of pressure, the freedom that comes from being ignored, is probably what allowed him to run his race.
Absolutely. Which naturally led to the inevitable collapse and the public dismissal. He was unplaced in his next race, then dead last in the Tenno Show autumn.
And the laughter was immediate. The fluke theory was right.
That narrative of him being a joke just perfectly set the stage for his greatest triumph. We arrive at the final G1 of 1992, the Arima Kinen, the year-end Grand Prix.
He was sent off as the 15th favorite.
Second last in the entire field. The expectations were literally 0.
And he thrives in a vacuum of expectation. Chaos returned. Palmer takes the lead. Helios challenges.
And those two just ran completely alone at an insane pace. Let's talk about the tactical paralysis of the field here.
Right. What were the other jockeys thinking?
Well, elite races rely on a predictable pace. The champions, Tokai Teo, Rice Shower, they were all waiting for the early leaders to crack in the final stretch.
Because statistically they had to.
They had to. But Palmer and Helios broke the physics of the race. They forced the elites to choose, either burn up early chasing them or risk being too far behind to challenge late.
And they chose to wait.
And the wait was fatal. Helios finally cracked, but Palmer, using that sustained stamina from the brutal jump training, just kept going. He held on through the stretch, fending off Legacy World to win.
He completed the Spring-Autumn Grand Prix double.
A historic achievement. Only one horse in RA1 had ever done that before. It was undeniable proof.
It wasn't a fluke.
It was a unique strategy that, when executed perfectly by ignoring all conventional wisdom, was absolutely deadly. He found a way to win by making his rivals hesitate.
And after proving the doubters wrong, Palmer reached full maturity at 5 years old.
And his win early the next year in the Henshin Dashoten, in record time, definitively proved the Urima Kinen was not an accident. He was a genuine world-class stayer.
But built not through perfect breeding, but through this painful, deliberate re-engineering.
Exactly. And that maturity set him up for what many people remember as his greatest performance, even though he didn't win.
The 1993 Tenno Show Spring. He's up against his famous stablemate, Mejiro McQueen, the king of stayers, and the phenomenal Rice Shower.
Palmer did what he always did, but with this added strength. He led at full throttle for the entire 3,200 meters, a perfect suicidal race.
And though he was finally caught by McQueen and Rice Shower at the fourth corner, he just refused to surrender.
He finished third after what is remembered as a brutal, unforgettable battle. He ran himself into the ground, but he finally, unequivocally, earned the respect of the entire racing world.
But that level of effort, unfortunately, comes with a cost.
It does. That epic 93 performance just utterly drained him. For the rest of that year, he never even made it onto the board.
He showed one last spark, though. A second place in early 94.
He did, in the Nikki Shinshin High. But the injuries returned, forcing his retirement in September of 94. The flame had burned out after one last glorious burst.
So let's just look back at this logic-defying career. He never won as the favorite. He caused chaos whenever he ran with Takarazuka Helios.
He bloomed late after being essentially given up on.
And yet he achieved the Spring-Autumn Grand Prix champion title. He ran the longest active career among his famous contemporaries.
They called him the late-arriving escape artist. It's perfect.
It really is.
I think what Mejiro Palmer teaches us is that success doesn't always come through refinement or compromise. He succeeded not despite his flaws, but because of...
It was never smooth, reliable, or normal.
Never. He found success when chaos rolled, showing that you can build unexpected strength, like that stamina from his painful failing detour into jump racing, and then just refused to back down from a seemingly reckless style.
He was a horse discarded, rebuilt, and deeply misunderstood, who ran straight into history by being exactly who he was. And here is a provocative thought for you to take away as you reflect on this deep dive. Palmer ran the longest active career among his contemporaries and achieved historic, era-defining success. Yet the sources make it crystal clear he ran best when ignored.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.